right, welcome back to the CFB Nation All-America podcast. We want to talk a little NFL draft after we just discussed the college football playoff calendar. My brilliant solution that will not be listened to, according to Bill Bender. They do not listen to sports writers. We will have some Troche trivia, and we will go from there. So, Bill, you were heavily involved in our NFL draft coverage at sportingnews.com. You were tracking pick by pick by pick. You came up immediately at the end of the draft with the pick by college. No surprise, Georgia and Alabama tied for the first. Another SEC school on top of that list. Any surprises? I think Michigan had 9. What was it? Georgia and Alabama had 10. Michigan had 9. TCU had 8. 3 of the 4 college football playoffs teams right there.
Well, and the PSA for the playoff programs, and it's what it typically is. Georgia, 25 players in 2 years, and what is it, five now that went to Philadelphia. I mean, it really, the NFL draft to me, what made me happy was there was a lot of, for the college football guys, a lot of not overthinking it. Like for Houston to not overthink it and take CJ Stroud and not overthink it and go get Will Anderson. That was cool. For the Eagles to not overthink it and take a Jalen Carter and then get Nolan Smith. And this revolutionary new tactic of taking players off the best defense in college football the last 2 years and stockpiling them in your locker room. It was cool. So Georgia definitely had a big night. I think one draft trend, and I've seen a couple people talk about this as I was tracking it, because my spreadsheet has it by conference. In the top 50 picks, there was not a group of 5 player. There was one FCS player in the top 50. It was Cody Mock, who had got a lot of attention from North Dakota State. Our colleague Matt Latofsky will be quick to talk North Dakota State football with anybody who's interested. But yeah, it was a lot of SEC and a lot of Big Ten, and a lot of what I always preach to you, that it's those two conferences driving the bus. And I think it's going to be more like that as we venture further into the NIL/transfer portal era, where unfortunately college football, as far as the NFL concerned, the Power 5 will be the AAA, and the group of 5 will be the single A and double A.
What did you think of the Lions? They went with Jahmyr Gibbs early, and then they took a Hendon Hooker, a flyer on Hendon Hooker, who's starting to get healthy, after his knee injury and stuff. A lot of debate on where he might end up. So two eyebrow-raising picks from the Lions. What'd you think of that?
They got the guys they wanted. It's not the way I would have done it. Dan Campbell's doing things a little bit differently. Jahmyr Gibbs is not the second coming of Barry Sanders. So they obviously had a plan, though, because the DeAndre Swift trade happened pretty quickly. So they're going to roll with Montgomery and Gibbs. Did they get the value? No. Did they get the player they wanted? Obviously. Brad Holmes was very happy about it. I think Jack Campbell will do fine there. They had a high motor linebacker named Chris Spielman once upon a time that did just fine there. I don't know if Jack Campbell's the second coming of Chris Spielman, but I do know that when he played at Iowa, the motor never stopped. I still remember getting a text from a buddy when Ohio State was destroying them last year. I think I told you the story. And he loves watching linebackers. And he said that whatever Campbell's number was it 45 or 35? He said that kid hasn't quit. He's still crushing people. And I think that's what they get there. And then on day 2, they got good value picks with Sam Laporta and some others. So, and I'm a Green Bay fan, so I'm not allowed to talk too nice about the Lions for too long. But in terms of what they were trying to do and being close, Hendon Hooker, that's the other one, right? So yeah, okay, that's going to put a little pressure on Jared Goff, and we'll see where it goes. But that was the right spot in the draft for Hendon Hooker, and he could have probably gone even higher.
Yeah, that for college football fans who are college football fans first and just watching the draft, those are some names that you quickly recognize that the Lions scooped up for sure. Any surprises to you? What were your thoughts? Yeah, as I think we've talked about, Will Levis from a college football perspective did not impress me necessarily. And then there was talk he was going to go top 4. Of course, everybody knows he slipped to the second round, which seemed more appropriate, or even not even. I mean, I'm not even sure he's a second rounder. But what were your thoughts on day one when he just kept slipping and slipping and slipping?
It happens. It's happened to Aaron Rodgers and Brady Quinn, and in recent years, Malik Willis. And it's unfortunate because you feel for him as like the parent. If I always put myself in the parent's shoes. I was like, man, that'd be uncomfortable to be sitting there with your kid and having them do that. I mean, a lot of meme material came out of it. Um, Twitter has a fascination with the wrong things with Will Levis. Like they kept talking about the mayonnaise in the coffee, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't. And it that caught up with him on some level though. I bet you it was some on some level because that we're just branding him that. Whereas it actually works out because he goes into a second round situation. He's going to have a chance to compete for a job. Ryan Tannehill's days in Tennessee are clearly numbered. Malik Willis wasn't the right answer, maybe. So Levis will have a chance to prove it there. Once Anthony Richardson was taken at 4, you knew a slide was coming. Jacob Kemaker, another guy we work with, kind of called that. So good for Jacob. And it's unfortunate, but I'm kind of with you. I think he needs time before we're even coming close to branding him a franchise quarterback.
Speaking of quarterbacks, lots of them drafted 10, I think, right? And Sean Clifford from Penn, who Will Levis couldn't beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State, and so he ended up transferring to Clayton Tune, Jaron Hall. They were all taken ahead of Max Duggan, who we fell in love with last college football season. He was amazing, just blood and guts and willing TCU to the playoff, and almost an undefeated season. They lost the last second, of course, to Kansas State in the Big 12 championship game. Were you surprised Duggan went behind some of those guys? And then secondly, I want to talk a little bit about, we had a list of the quarterbacks who passed on the NFL draft: Bo Nix, Michael Penix, and, a lot of big names that could have gone, but decided to come back to school. The way the quarterbacks are coming off the board, maybe they made a premature decision. They could have gone in 4th, 5th round this year.
Right. I think Michael Penix would go higher than a lot of those guys.
Yeah.
I'm really high on him going into next year. Duggan, it is what it is. This happens. I mean, that's a Trace McSorley type player. Like, I don't care where he went in the NFL. I enjoyed watching him in college. Sean Clifford to Green Bay it is what it is. But hey, some of these guys have been around.
The Packers, go ahead, trash him.
No, it's not a great pick. We can start there. But Sean Clifford, he's going to hold a clipboard. He's going to compete in camp for a backup job. That's what it is. Tanner McKee, a lot of those guys you mentioned, Clifford, Duggan, McKee, a lot of experience. And that's why I'm not worried about Hendon Hooker landing where he landed and Stetson Bennett landing where Stetson Bennett hit the lottery. He gets to learn from Stafford. He goes to a staff with, the sets that are comparable to what Georgia ran. A lot of when they use double tight sets, I think Stetson Bennett will be very successful at that as a backup quarterback. So some of it's the Brock Purdy effect too. That's been written about a lot where guys are just taking chances now because Brock Purdy worked out for the 49ers when the reality is the 49ers have Shanahan, great quarterback, offense, fun to watch that made it easier for Brock Purdy to be successful.
Debo Samuel, George Kittle, they got some guys.
They got McCaffrey, Kittle, Samuel. Get the ball to those guys. That's what I would say if I was the offensive coordinator. It's not that bad.
So, yeah. All right, so let's look a little bit ahead. You spent a lot of time putting together a big board for next year. I'll let you take the floor. Kind of, you've been looking at it. One thing that stood out, you and I talked about, Ohio State's got a lot of names on this list.
Yeah, Sporting News did a 2024 NFL big board, NFL draft big board. I do it every year. It's fun. I consult Vinny on it. 8 Ohio State guys on that list of the top 50. And that tells me Buckeyes, it's a national championship or bust year. It always is. But when you have that much NFL talent, one of the things you don't want to hear in the following draft, when you hear a potential of 5, 6, 7 guys going in the first round, is how in the world did they not win the national championship? Because it starts at the top with Marvin Harrison Jr., who, when we ran the big board, we have him number 1. Okay. The receiver hasn't been taken since Keyshawn in 96. And one of the quick responses was, there's no way Marvin Harrison is going to be taken number 1. Fine. Doesn't mean he's not the top player on the board. Tell me he's not. I mean, when you watch him and you hear people saying he's better than his dad is one of the greatest receivers I've ever seen. So when you have that kind of potential as a can't miss guy, I have no problem putting him number 1.
All right, now I forgot to tease our Troche trivia. All right, so we'll go Troche
Rewind.
trivia.
Let's do Troche trivia. I was going to say something.
I'll give you the question, and then we'll get back into the big board, and you can answer the question at the end of the show. Okay, Troche trivia, and it's going to tie into our next little discussion point. Can you name the 5 USC quarterbacks in history who were drafted in the first round? They're all in the modern era. Don't think 60s, 70s. Can you name the 5 USC quarterbacks drafted in the first round? And that will lead us into.
I don't have a pencil. I have to find I always need a pencil for this. Let me find a little piece of scrap. I'm taking. This is live.
Find a pencil.
Standard. I got my pencil, and I need a piece of paper. So I'm going to.
But number 6 on that list, of course. Number 6 on that list next year will be Caleb Williams. Number 6 will be Caleb. He will be the 6th USC first-round draft pick, presumably, unless absolute disaster strikes somehow. Tell me, how do you determine Caleb Williams versus Marvin Harrison for the number 1 spot? I mean, we're splitting hairs, obviously, but you went with Harrison at 1 and Caleb Williams at 2.
Well, obviously, Caleb Williams is going to go number 1. Or number 2. Well, that's the thing. There's no debate about the top receiver. There's still debate with Caleb Williams. I could make a case for Drake May being the top quarterback on the board. I could make the case for who was the quarterback we were talking about before we came on today? Well, at the Athletic, you said their mock draft, and Dane Brugler has J.J. McCarthy up there. What if J.J. McCarthy wins a national championship at Michigan and blows up? You know, he has a rocket arm. What if Quinn Ewers wins a national title at Texas? That arm, there's guys that could happen. So Caleb Williams, all this is me lying as usual. And Caleb Williams will probably be number 1. He's super talented. But to me, quarterbacks are never can't miss. Did you think that CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are can't miss guys? You just never know with quarterbacks. I can say with 99% confidence that if Marvin Harrison doesn't have like a career-threatening injury, that he is going to be a perennial Pro Bowler type talent at the next level. I can say that. I can't say that about any of the quarterbacks in the draft, even if I really love their talent.
There are comps to Mahomes with Caleb Williams. Mm-hmm. I mean, we hear a lot of people, any sort of mobile athletic quarterback who does some funky things gets immediately compared to Mahomes. But in your opinion, are they legit with Caleb?
I just got the 5th quarterback from USC, by the way. But I'm listening. No, I mean, so I when Caleb Williams first came onto the scene at Oklahoma, I thought that looks like Patrick Mahomes, the ability to extend plays, the ability to just, you and I have done this on Slack during games. You'd be like, did you see that throw? Did you see that play? And that's the Mahomes effect, where it's like he does some of that stuff where you're like, oh my gosh, how did he flip that ball 40 yards down the field? How did he get that deep hitch out to that guy? He does some his playmaking skills are remarkable. He is a super talented guy. He runs when he has to. He's elusive when he has to. And yeah, I think I was on that bandwagon when we saw him play one game at Oklahoma. One game. When he came in the Texas game, I was like, oh my gosh, what are we dealing with? And one more year of that is going to be very good. So that's the thing. This year's draft, I'm going to be honest with you, was a little blah. Next year, when we're talking about Harrison and Caleb Williams and Drake May, who I love just as much, I think Drake May, I watch him and I'm seeing a guy that is very, very good, a playmaker, a tough kid. We did the profile on him last year. I love kids that generally love where they're at. I love the fact that he stayed at North Carolina too. Brock Bowers. When have we seen a tight end like that? Don't make the Gronkowski comparison. That's not fair. But a freaky tight end of that caliber doesn't come along that often. There will be a case for him to be a top 5 pick. So, I mean, come on, Bill. Next year's draft is going to be super exciting with that class of freaky athlete at the top.
Yeah, Bowers might have the speed of Gronk, but he does not have the size at all.
I always forget that, like, Gronk is like 265 pounds.
Right.
Was it 260 or 270?
And he was fast.
And he was ridiculous, and he caught everything. And yeah, like, you know, I got a chance to see him play the Browns late in his the game. Remember the game where Brady came back from his suspension, and I got to see Gronk in a locker room, and I was just like, how do athletes that big move that fast? Like, it was an amazing thing. So yeah, but the freaks in next year's draft are very cool.
Caleb still has one of my favorite college football players of all time. It was against Kansas. I don't know if you remember the play where the running back had the ball, and it was going to be a 4th down situation, and they only had like a 1-score lead. Oklahoma was struggling against Kansas, and the back was stacked up, and he stripped the ball from his own running back and ran for the first down.
Right.
I have never seen a heads-up play like that. That was just brilliant. I loved it. And yeah, it was great to see. So let's look at your QBs on your big board. All right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have McCarthy listed, I don't think, which you feel like he still has potential to break in with a big year for sure, right?
Yeah, Michigan hasn't had a first round. There's a tricky trivia for you. Michigan hasn't had a first round quarterback since Harbaugh.
Oh, wow.
Since Jim Harbaugh. So I don't know that they'll open up. If we get the McCarthy we got late in the season against Ohio State, TCU, Purdue, where they were letting him throw it down the field a little more, some of that dictated by Corum's injury, then yeah, he could be a first-round pick. I like
you got Shedeur Sanders 3rd behind Williams and Drake May.
That you can put an asterisk on that because I think he's going to play 2 years at Colorado.
I mean, they don't have a roster around him right now. Like, that's scary situation.
I think Dion/Dad will make him stay an extra year. Will encourage his son to stay an extra year. I like his talent, though. I mean, I'm not going to deny the talent. I think Quinn Ewers and McCarthy are the ones with big upside into moving up this year. I think Michael Penix has upside to move up. The 2 guys that I didn't put on the top 10, and I'm starting to regret it with each passing thought, is I think Jordan Travis has a lot of high upside. If you liked Kyler Murray, you're going to like his playmaking skills. And I think the X factor guy in next year's quarterback draft is the fascination with Joe Milton. And what an arm he has, right? Mm-hmm. Does he do what Hendon Hooker did and improve his stock by showing he can be an accurate quarterback at Tennessee? If so, if we get Orange Bowl Joe Milton for a full season, Bill, it's not impossible for him to be a first-round pick.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he's definitely got the physical tools. But yeah, Sanders it concerns me because, 4-8 is not off the table for Colorado, he could take a beating if they don't get that offensive line put back together. They've got some skill position guys coming in and things like that. But every little big transfer from Florida State or Alabama, none of them are linemen, offense or defense. And they are thin. And if you can't do anything on either line, it's going to be tough.
Right. So, I mean, but, it can change this year. And I've been pretty decent about where the guys go. Like the last few years, I was on Joe Burrow before, but look how his stock changed from one year. His first year at LSU was brutal. They change an offensive coordinator. They bring in Brady, and all of a sudden he throws for 60 touchdowns, and you've got to see the real Joe Burrow. So some of that's what happened with Bo Nix last year. We saw a Bo Nix is an intriguing NFL prospect
Mm-hmm.
at the quarterback position. So
Mm-hmm.
some things will change. Some guys will pop out that we didn't list. But like I said, the ones that are bugging me, because whenever I write something, it always like kind of think second guess yourself a little bit. And I'm like, Jordan Travis probably should be on there. Joe Milton probably should be on there. And then we'll see from
McCarthy,
there.
maybe.
McCarthy probably should be higher, but I want to see them turn him loose a little bit. I've seen that with Michigan quarterbacks in the past where, Chad Henne wasn't a first round pick, and he probably could be if they turned him loose.
Yeah. Yeah.
He played a long time in the NFL, by the way, and tortured the Browns and the Bengals.
So, all right. Well, let's wrap it up with a trivia answer. Let's see what you got on that magic piece of paper that you just wrote down. Who are the 5 USC quarterbacks who have been drafted in the first round? And like I said, none of them are like way back in the 40s or 50s or 60s or anything like that. So
I got 4. So if they're not in like the 60s, that means Pat Hayden's not one of them. Can I have
correct.
that hint? Okay, then I think I got the other 5.
Right.
It's going to be Darnold.
Sam Darnold went first to the Panthers in the 3rd overall, 2018.
Sanchez.
Mark Sanchez, 5th overall to the Jets in 2009.
Leinart.
Matt Leinart, 10th to the Cardinals in 2006.
Palmer
was a 1-1 to the Bengals in 2003.
Oh, this one's going to bug me. I'm going to guess Marinovich. I think he's the 5th. That's my guess.
Todd Marinovich, 24th overall to the Raiders in 1991. Well done, Bill Bender.
I was going to guess the one that was
fire.
But you would have given me
You would have guessed who?
The hint was I was going to guess Pat Hayden.
Oh, okay.
And then if it wasn't Hayden, the choice was Marinovich or Rodney Peete.
I was thinking Rodney Peete too.
So it wasn't Rodney Peete. So I'm going to have to go look where he was drafted. But that was a pure guess on Marinovich. So don't give me too much credit because I really wanted to say Rodney Peete. But I think the point of this exercise is not like the greatest. I mean, Palmer had a good NFL career. Yes. Leinart and Sanchez had moments, but not what you would expect from a total franchise quarterback, maybe.
Right. And Darnold hasn't taken off yet.
Right. Palmer was good before the ACL, and I'd give him, he did have a nice second act. Once the ugliness of his Cincinnati stay ended, had a good final act in Arizona for sure.
Right. So, all right. Well, that's our show. We will be back next week to talk about the transfer portal closing. The window has shut. It's shut on Sunday night. And so if you wanted to be eligible to play at your next school next fall, you have to already have been in the portal. It doesn't mean you had to pick your next school, but you have to be in the portal in order to be eligible. So with the window closing and some big decisions already made, I know you are working on adjusting your way too early top 25. We can look at that next week on the podcast, kind of review that. Keep an eye out for it on sportingnews.com if you want a sneak preview. And we'll might look at some big decisions that are pending for people in the portal that may have an effect on next year's season. But we would just want to thank everyone to listening for this week's All-America podcast. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next week.